Hey guys, welcome to segment 3 of grammar rules that you must know. For those who don't know me, I'm Jackie, senior tutor at Prepped and Polished. And this week, guys, we are going to be going over comma use. So for those of you who have joined us before, as you know, we've been working through a couple technical difficulties and figuring out what setup works best. So this week, guys, for visibility's sake, I'm actually going to be off screen, okay? So that way you can really see the PowerPoint, okay? So I will still be answering questions. Typically, we've done 3 topics, and I've stopped after each one, but this week we're going to be doing exclusively comma use, so I'm going to stop after each concept or slide, okay, for questions. All right, so if that's all, I'm going to step off screen, guys, and we're going to get started. Okay, so hopefully, guys, visibility is significantly better this way. Okay, guys, so the first thing we're going to look at is, why is comma use important? Why does it matter so much? Okay, so aside from being the second most piece of punctuation in English, only second to the period, the comma is used to indicate what information belongs with other information, how specific a subject is. In other words, guys, commas clarify information, okay? So let's look at this magazine cover as an example, okay? Next to us, it says, "Eat, Ray, love," okay? Rachel Ray finds inspiration in cooking her family and her dog. So without the commas here, guys, suddenly we see this cover a little bit differently, right? The poor dog. Okay, because without commas, it's saying that she enjoys or finds inspiration in cooking her family and her dog. Okay, but with commas, right, where they should be, it should indicate she finds inspiration in these 3 things, right? Inspiration in cooking, comma, her family, comma, and her dog, right? So these 3 things, okay, as opposed to the current statement, right, that she's a cannibal and enjoys eating her family and her dog, right? Clearly a grammatical error, but this should show you guys the importance of comma use. Why is this so important? Okay. All right, guys, so before we get into uses, we're going to break some comma myths, right? We're going to bust some of these comma myths. So if you've heard some of these before, that's okay. Okay, and some of them are partially true, but not beneficial in terms of learning their actual rules and functions. Okay, so first, a long sentence requires a comma. Okay, this is not true. Just because a sentence is long, okay, doesn't mean it needs a comma. So let's look at an example of a sentence that is quite long, fairly complex, but has no commas in it, and grammatically does not require a comma. The marching band from South Carolina that won the national championship for the last 5 years in a row had trained all season and planned to continue their victory streak at this year's competition. Okay, so understandably, guys, this sounds long. We could rephrase it to possibly make it less confusing, okay, but the statement here, the marching band from South Carolina that won the national championship for the last 5 years in a row, is our subject. It's a specific subject. So everything after marching band, right, from South Carolina down to 5 years in a row, is modifying information. So it's not just a marching band from South Carolina, it's the specific one that won the national championship for 5 years in a row. So there are no commas there, guys, because it's just a complex subject. Okay, so this sentence is grammatically correct despite being quite long. Myth number 2, you should put a comma wherever you'd pause speaking to take a breath. So there's nothing wrong with this statement in itself, guys. So it is true in the sense that commas are designed to indicate where we would pause, but they're also designed to do other things, right? They can serve as parentheses. They can separate items in a list, okay, where you're not necessarily pausing for a long time. The other issue with this statement, put a comma wherever you pause to take a breath. Okay? There's no clarity. Right? What if you pause accidentally, but you shouldn't have really paused there? Okay, so you don't want to use this as the foundational basis for when you should use a comma. Okay, instead of something like this, you want specific rules. When should I definitely use one? When should I not use one? And we're going to go over these today. Myth number 3, a comma is interchangeable with the word and. Okay? So this statement is also sometimes true, okay? But in very specific circumstances, guys. So since this is not always true, you don't want to base your understanding of how to use commas off of this either. So, a couple misuses or incorrect understandings of commas. In other words, today, guys, we're going to go over how you should use them. Okay. So, what should we do with them? All right. So, first off, guys, one of the most common, separate items in a list. Okay. This is any list of 3 or more items. Okay. So this says each item must be followed by a comma, okay, except, guys, the last item. That's optional. So the local theater offered a variety of concessions, including candy, soda, popcorn, pizza, and confections for dessert. Okay. So, guys, because we have a list here of 3 or more items, in order to separate each of the items, there needs to be a comma after them. However, the comma after pizza, the last item on the list, okay, this is optional. What I do recommend, if you leave off the comma on your first list, if you're writing, and then you write a second one, to keep that choice consistent. So whether you choose to write it like this, okay, or like this, okay, with no comma after pizza, both are correct. Try to keep it consistent in your writing. Right, however, okay, although the comma after pizza is optional, there should never be a comma, okay, after the word and when it is in a list of items, okay? In other words, guys, you can put commas after and, but not when it's in a list. So this version, okay, soda, popcorn, pizza, and confections for dessert, okay, this is an error. We should not have a comma after and here. All right, guys, so in terms of items in a list, I don't see any questions so far, right? So we're going to keep moving on to the next comma use. They are also used to separate adjectives whose order could be reversed. Okay, so in order to figure out what this means, we need to know, okay, what does it mean to have adjectives whose order can't be reversed? So sometimes students not sure what I mean by that, okay, order who could be reversed. So we're going to look at an example of the opposite to better understand what this means, okay? So, at the mountain's peak, we could see a beautiful bald eagle flying above. This is an example of modifiers that can't be reversed, okay? We can't reverse the order of beautiful and bald, okay? So, at the mountain's peak, we could see a bald, beautiful eagle, okay, right? This one doesn't work out. So any adjective or modifier that needs to be directly attached to the noun, it's modifying, like a flat screen TV, okay? You wouldn't say my flat screen state-of-the-art TV, you would say my state-of-the-art flat screen TV or blow-up bed or any of these types of adjectives, okay? So let's look at an example with adjectives that can be reversed, right? So the local theater was known for supporting and hosting more innovative, passionate indie movies over the major blockbusters, okay? So here, these orders can be reversed. It doesn't matter which order the adjectives come in. Okay, so this is also correct. The local theater was known for supporting and hosting more passionate, innovative indie movies over the major blockbusters. Okay, so the meaning hasn't changed. The order can be reversed. So we put a comma between them. Okay, and then we have a third option, guys, and this is where that comma myth comes from. That commas just replace ands. Okay, that is specific and situational, but here is an example where it can do that, right? Between two adjectives whose order could be reversed, we can place an and instead of the comma. Okay, so the local theater was known for supporting and hosting more innovative and passionate indie movies over the major blockbusters. Okay. All right, guys, so let's move on to our next comma use. Okay. After introductory words and phrases. Okay, so there's a myriad of types of phrases like this, guys. They can be transition words, they can be a set of different things, okay? But it's always after an introductory phrase, something modifying the subject, possibly, okay? So these can be short, okay, a quick transition word. Indeed, Star Wars is one of the greatest trilogies of all time, okay? Or they can be more complex, right? Despite her initial reluctance to try a new ice cream flavor at the local shop, Brienne decided to go for it and get pistachio. Okay, so in this situation, in order to separate the introductory words and phrases from the core statement, we need a comma to set these off. Okay, so this includes, guys, however, therefore, right? So a lot of your transition words, if they start your sentence, they're going to have a comma after them. All right, guys, so since we don't have any questions yet, we're going to keep going through these uses, right? So to separate non-essential or parenthetical information from the rest of the sentence, okay? So we've talked about non-essential clauses briefly before. Okay? So non-essential is exactly how they sound. They're not essential to the core meaning or grammatic structure of the sentence. Okay, so instead of parentheses, like in the title here, parenthetical information, okay, instead of those parentheses, we could choose to use a comma instead. Okay, so the statements, often they can provide additional information about or modify the subject. Okay, so we'll look here. Henry VIII, who is known for his many wives, initiated the English Reformation and appointed himself the supreme head of the Church of England. Okay. So the portion of this sentence, guys, that's non-essential or parenthetical is the who is known for his many wives, right? This is not necessary to the sentence. It's an aside. So if we read the sentence without the statement, this is how we can check, is the information non-essential? It'll hold up and it'll make grammatic sense. Henry VIII initiated the English Reformation and appointed himself the supreme head of the Church of England. Okay. So if you guys want to check, is this non-essential information, you're kind of unsure, okay, read the sentence without it. The other key is, right, most of them are often, they'll start with W words like we have here, who or which, right, which is known for, who is known for. And then the other piece, guys, for parenthetical information is it doesn't have to modify the subject. It's just anything that's not critical to the sentence. Okay. So the average world temperature, however, has continued to markedly rise. This statement could just be the average world temperature has continued to markedly rise. Okay. And if you're looking for where does the comma belong, right? The last comma after the non-essential information is almost always directly before the sentence's verb. Okay. If the sentence's verb falls within the statement, it cannot be non-essential information. Okay. Let's look at one more. Okay, just so you get an idea of variation here, guys. Okay, each summer, which is my favorite time of year, my family goes to our camp in the Adirondacks. Okay, so the core sentence, each summer, my family goes to our camp in the Adirondacks. Okay, remains, so we need the commas around the non-essential clause or that which statement. All right, guys, and just a quick mention, the reason you might select to use commas instead of, say, parentheses, okay, is the visual. In part, I tend to use parentheses for something that's a brief aside or a quick explanation, okay, especially if it's maybe something in a scientific writing. And then commas if you want it to look or feel more integrated into the sentence, like the Henry VIII statement at the top. All right, guys, so if we don't have any questions about non-essential clauses and how to punctuate them with commas, we're going to go on to the next topic. All right, so commas also differentiate between specific or a more general subject. In other words, we're going to look at two sentences here, neither which will be grammatically incorrect, but one is going to make more logical sense. Okay, so let's look at statement 1. Hikers who hike during the winter months need to pack specialized thermal equipment to stay warm. So guys, this statement here, hikers is the subject of our sentence. Okay, hikers in general, all hikers. And the way it's set up here grammatically with the commas after hikers and after months indicates that the statement after hikers is non-essential. Okay, so this core sentence is hikers need to pack specialized thermal equipment to stay warm. Well, this is still not grammatically wrong. Okay, so this sentence is grammatically acceptable. The statement they need to pack specialized thermal equipment to stay warm feels very specific to a certain type of hiker. Okay? In other words, not all hikers need to pack specialized thermal equipment. Right? Maybe you hike during the summer. You don't need specialized thermal equipment. So, in order to change this, we would remove the commas, okay, because the information included is specific to a certain type of hiker, okay. So without the commas, the subject becomes complex, it becomes modified by the statement, who hike during winter months. Okay. So here, the commas determine how general or specific the subject is, because in the sentence below, our subject is no longer hikers in general, all hikers, but hikers that hike or who hike during the winter months, okay, need to pack specialized thermal equipment to stay warm. Okay, so now we have a specific subject that's more fitting to the sentence. Okay, so in something like this, is the information non-essential or not? Okay, it is essential when the information is modifying or altering the subject. All right, guys, so let's move on to our next piece. Okay. Commas and fanboys together. Okay, if you haven't seen fanboys before, don't worry, we're going to go over them. Okay. So fanboys, guys, are coordinating conjunctions. In other words, right, it's just an acronym, okay, for and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. Okay, and for sure the most common is going to be and, a comma and. Okay, so these together, a comma followed by any of these words, is an acceptable way to punctuate and separate two complete sentences. Okay. So if you guys have heard of a comma splice, right, that's probably something you've had written on some of your English papers, something circled and it says comma splice. What that means is you've separated two independent clauses, two full sentences, by a comma. Okay? In other words, you've incorrectly punctuated it because it requires a period. Right? So one of your options, okay, if you have a comma splice, is to remove the comma and replace it with either a period or a semicolon. Okay? Those two pieces of punctuation. are equivalent, okay? And so is a comma with a fanboy. In other words, guys, I want you to start seeing these two together, a comma followed by a fanboy, as equivalent punctuation to a period. Right? So another way to fix the comma splice, instead of removing the comma and adding a period or semicolon, is to add one of these conjunctions. So let's look at the example here. The cat lounged all day on the sofa, period. That's a full sentence. And then we have, he occasionally got up to eat from his food bowl, right? That a little bit of movement. Okay, so these can be connected. Right now they're properly punctuated with a period. Okay, there's our fat cat lounging on the sofa. Okay, or we can put the comma and one of these coordinating conjunctions. And is fine. I put a but. The cat lounged all day on the sofa, but he occasionally got up to eat from his food bowl. Okay, so both of these are grammatically acceptable. So I also want to quickly explain why, right? So the reason, guys, this is equivalent to a period, right, or the other reason it fixes a comma splice, okay, is because a comma splice is what divides two separate sentences, right, two independent clauses. With the comma and the coordinating conjunction, okay, so let's look at the second clause down here, but he occasionally got up to eat from his food bowl. Okay, the reason this fixes the comma splice, guys, is that but he occasionally got up to eat from his food bowl is no longer a full sentence. The coordinating conjunction makes the second statement dependent, which makes a comma an acceptable grammatical separation, okay, of one dependent and one independent clause. So if you're ever trying to figure out, man, I really want this to be one full sentence, these ideas feel attached, you always have the option to put a semicolon, or guys, okay, put a comma in one of these conjunctions. So again, I recommend this week, okay, trying to incorporate some of these rules into your writing, okay? So if you're one of the people who saw those comma myths and thought, oh gee, that's me, usually I'll say a sentence out loud, see where I pause to figure out where I should put the comma. This week, I'd like you to try using these specific rules. Is there non-essential information that needs to be punctuated? Is there an introductory clause or phrase? Okay. Are there two adjectives whose order could be reversed? And think about it that way. Does a comma belong or not? Okay, it'll feel more definitive, a little bit more empowering, guys. Okay. All right, so although today was in no way a comprehensive list, we did go over the core functions of a comma, okay? But I do want to briefly recap, okay? So, guys, I'll just leave information for next session up while we do the recap, okay? What is a comma for? That's what we went over today. The primary purpose is clarity. They provide clarity to writing. They correctly connect certain information, things that modify statements, to the things they modify, okay? So if you're wondering, is comma use important? Does it matter? It's one of the most valuable and dynamic pieces of punctuation in English. And it's one of the primary ways, okay, that we find clarity in writing. So when you're thinking about writing as a way to communicate your ideas, and commas are the way that we can make sure our writing and ideas, okay, are transmitted clearly. They make sense. We made the point we wanted to make. Commas are essential, guys. So are they important? Absolutely, okay, because especially in this medium of expression, clarity, making sure the ideas you want to come across do is so important. So make sure you try out some of these rules if you're writing for school, if you're taking online courses, or just doing writing at home. Okay, think about some of these comma uses we went over today and try replacing, Okay, kind of those old ways of thinking about commas. Should I pause here? Did I take a breath? And replace them with the definitive rules we looked at today. Next week, on top of some other grammar rules, we're going to look at misuses of commas. Where do they go wrong? Okay, where do we put them that we think they belong, but they actually don't? Okay, so a little more clarity on comma use next week, alongside some new grammar topics. Okay, so next week's session is going to be same time and day, Wednesday, from 12 to 1 p.m. Okay, and guys, as always, if you're looking for individualized help, if you want one-on-one tutoring with one of our many excellent tutors, please visit either our website or give us a call, okay? And we will see you next week for more grammar basics that you must know. Thanks, guys.